Hey there, welcome to Friendly Ties. We are talking about a really cool board game. We're going under the ocean with Endeavor Deep Sea today. Endeavor Deep Sea is a game that has just come out last year. It is an evolution of a previous game that came out in 2018 and a game that came out in 2009, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit later on, but this new version is one that's kind of taken us by storm. This is a game all about the ocean and diving deep and competing to out-sonar each other.
Yeah,
competing to
first time I ever
out-sonar
heard
each
that
other.
sentence.
Diving into the depths of the sea.
Yeah, good theme, right? Like, it's not a lot of games I think about deep sea diving. Pretty art on these. You like explore out these like little tiles that go on the board. I think that they work really nicely.
Yeah. And it's a really cool system because literally it says this on the front page of the rule book. Play against your friends or with them or without them, which is just kind of like speaks to the breadth here that we're about to go into.
It covers everything. Does it say you can play with your dog as well?
Can do? It doesn't, but I think you could, honestly, for the amount of variety that Deep Sea allows you to explore.
Yeah, let's talk just like super briefly about the core system that's going on here. Just then we can talk a lot about what we liked. This is a game about tracks. And I know like a lot of modern Euro games are like, oh, it's tracks on tracks on tracks. But the tracks are super cool here.
So we always say that. Tracks are super cool. Yeah, there's so many tracks. These are really unique tracks.
We are friendly tracks. That could just be our new
friendly tracks. You know what? It is fair. When we did River of Gold, we were like, the tracks here are kind of mess. So actually, no, these tracks are cool.
So everyone has their own. We all have our own 4 tracks, and they dictate kind of everything. You're going to play 6 rounds, and every single round, you are going to activate each one of your tracks. The first one will just let you hire somebody for free, but depending on how far you are on that track, it depends on how good that person is. Do you get an intern or do you get like a PhD person joining your team? The next track just gives you action tokens that you can use to do stuff. The track after that lets you remove your previously placed action tokens so you could use them again. And then the last track lets you move around and dive. And all these are on your own board, and pretty much everything you're doing in this game covers up icons that say green track, orange track, yellow track.
You know what's so funny?
I love it.
They have names. They are reputation, inspiration, coordination, and ingenuity.
Absolutely not. No.
That's also on the first page of the rule book.
Reputation, I'll buy. The rest of them,
no way. No. They are orange, green, yellow, and blue, and that is how we will be referring to them for the rest of this hour.
Yes, absolutely.
And the game just like says, get a bunch of points for going up these tracks, right? Like your end game score, if you max out your tracks, is already 40. And everyone's, I think, in my experience, going to get like in the 30s. Like you're going to get up the tracks. Like you're going to get most of those points. It's just sort of like generating a baseline for you. But the game is very clear. Go up the tracks to get more powers. Also, we give you points. Like you can't ignore this, but also you couldn't ignore it even if you tried.
Yeah. It has this really cool auto-escalating thing where just every round, everybody hires and everybody gets stuff and everybody resets stuff. And then you actually do the actions. And in order to do the actions, you essentially make the people that you hired do stuff. And one thing, like just kind of jumping into like things I really like about this game, is that it's a pretty meaty Euro. Like there's a lot to think about. We'll probably talk about playtime later on. But the game is 5 actions, and the actions are really simple. They're just little icons. Sonar, you put a token down and you draw a new tile. There's a communal board. You're essentially building out the ocean. You're discovering the ocean. You flip over 2 cards, choose one, take the bonuses on it, which is going to be tracks. That's an action. Like honestly, if
tracks.
Like I just taught you most of the rules to that action. The next one is moving. Guess what? You move 1, 2, 3, or 4 spaces depending on your track. That's an action done. Yeah, exactly. You have conservation, which lets you put a token down onto a spot on the board, spending science. It says like 3 science, put a token down, get tracks. Move up tracks. Then
it doesn't have to be tracks. It could be stars.
There are some other benefits. But a lot of the benefits are tracks.
But yes.
Yeah, I know.
Right. And then the last 2 options, one is dive, which is literally there's a stack of random tokens on a lot of spots. You just take the top token, reveal it, get what it says. And the final one is journal. Spend science, take a card, get stuff, usually moving up tracks. Like that's actually about 50% of the literal rules for those actions.
Yeah, like we just taught you the game. Like it seems honestly, like in some ways the most complicated part of this teach is that it unless you are familiar with what I'm going to call the Endeavor system, because this track system is present in this game and the two previous games. Unless you're familiar with that, it actually is like a little bit of a where you sit down if you haven't played them, which I had not when I played Endeavor Deep Sea for the first time. It does take kind of a moment to like adjust to being like, okay, wait, everything I do is going to be dictated by these tracks. And then the actions are dictated by these discs you have that you place onto the specialist that you've hired. And they have the actions. And so like, it's just like it's a very interesting system in terms of like the ways it lets you do things and not do things and how things can kind of balloon into other things. But Jonathan just explained like, all of the rules, like that's it.
A significant amount of the rules, right?
4 tracks, like, and how those things interact within the spaces that it gives you, and then of course this board that you are exploring. I'm going to call it a board, but it's really a bunch of cards you're putting out that are going to explore the depths of the ocean. It's just a massive play space for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And y'all have more experience with the other Endeavor games than I do, but the Endeavor system is the tracks and also the employees that you hire, which then segue into the what we'll call, I guess, the non-Endeavor parts of the game. Is that
yes?
Is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And so in this one, it's those 5 actions that John described, right? Those are the non-Endeavor parts of the game that start doing the deep sea parts of it.
Exactly.
Everything up till the actions themselves is like almost identical to the previous games. Then the how is almost identical. The what you actually do is very different.
Oh, that's a good description. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I think that, it's worth taking a minute when we talk about those specialists, employees, whatever you kind of want to call them. What's really interesting is that they basically 5 tiers, and Jonathan explained how you can hire one for free at the start of every round based on the track. Your level on the orange track is what level you're going to be able to hire. But what's really interesting in this game is you might hear that like, oh, you can hire workers, you can hire specialists. Like, you're only going to hire 6 of these workers over the course of the game. You're going to play 6 rounds in this game. And 3 options in each of the first 4 columns, those are static. So every time you start this game, you think, okay, there's this wide space. But no, really, you can only buy from the first column and there are only 3 options. And so you're going to pick one of those and that is going to set off your game in a direction. And then in the 5th column, which is the highest level, those change if you even get there. But I think that that's something that's very interesting, is that this isn't like a Uwe Rosenberg game where you have like 97 buildings that you're going to build.
Yeah. Well, on top of that, even there's no text on these people. Like we said, the 5 actions, like it's just a mix and match of those. Like this person lets you conserve or journal. This person lets you dive twice. This person lets you move. You upgrade it. Now you can move and dive or whatever it is. It's just little icons, but the decision space of what to take can be pretty interesting. Well, like in the very first round you're like, okay, well, last game I went with the sonar person. Do I want to do the sonar person again? Well, maybe I probably should, but I want to try this other one. There's only the 3 to go with, but then by the time you get to the second round, you're going to be like, I desperately need a green track bump right now. This person gives me, because the people when you hire them, they frequently just give you a benefit immediately as well. It's an interesting mixture of short-term and long-term. You could be like, I'm going to hire this person who gives me an action I don't care about, but I need the green right now. Or you could be like, well, I'm going to forego the green. It's going to hurt this round, but this person's going to be great for me in rounds 3, 4, and 5,
Yeah. The workers, they branch, right? Like what choices you make in them branches out into what you're doing next. I'd say for the most part, in the mid to late game, what you take is quite forgiving. Like everything is good in its own way. So that decision between like immediate benefit or quote unquote long-term benefit, I don't think is too challenging. I think it's actually tightest at the beginning of the game where you really need to like make sure the track system is not complex, but it is demanding. It asks you to do a couple things to make sure that your game hums. And so, I think those decisions matter the most right at the start.
Right at the beginning. Yeah.
Because it's very easy to run out of gas early because you make the wrong mistake. And then you find some gas on the way and, you kind of putter across this finish line. But yeah, like Yeah, agreed. Like in the first round, like, do you do 2 or 3 actions? Like it really might come down to what you decide right there in the second round and whatnot. Little advantages and disadvantages can compound a little bit. Yeah.
Well, because one thing we haven't really talked about with this is that, so we kind of keep describing, we did like, okay, cool, you have these workers, but we also mentioned that you get these action discs, right? And one of the really interesting pieces of this is, so we said there's 4 tracks. The green track just gives you discs, right? So you're like, cool, I'm going to make discs in every round. But like the number of discs that you make, you have to increase on that track to make more discs. And as you can kind of hear here, like you're going to have more workers, you're going to want to use them, you're going to need more discs. And some of the actions that we described actually ask you to use an additional disc. So you're like constantly using discs. Not only are you placing a disc on your worker to use whatever action they're giving you, but you're also putting that disc out onto the board, maybe because you took a journal action, because you took a sonar action, because you took a conserve action. All 3 of those basically mean you have to use 2 discs to use them. So when you start this game and you only have 3 discs, you're like, there is only so much you can do because several of the actions require to use 2. Of course, you only have 2 worker spots. So, and there are ways to get more discs, but that's something to consider, right? But here's the twist, is that the yellow track is how many discs you get to remove off of your specialists at the start of each round. So you don't actually, this is not a game where it's like, cool, you used all your workers, okay, new round, clear all your worker spots off. No. You can only remove as many discs as you are allowed, as far as you are up on the yellow track. So it is a very interesting choice, especially in those early rounds, and all the rounds though too, but especially in those early rounds to be like, cool, not only am I making enough discs, or am I removing enough discs? And the discs you remove, you get back too. So that's also a disc economy, right? Like they're coming back to you. But you really need to be able to free up spots so that you can even use the discs that you have. And that to me is such a beautiful and interesting decision. But it is one of those things that takes a pretty simple system, but really works your brain, particularly at the beginning of the game.
I think you drilled in on what I was referring to as the demanding part of these systems, right? Because the orange track or the reputation track, lets you get new workers. They're cool. Hooray. The blue one lets you move farther or go deeper, which are also very cool and let you do cool things. But these green and yellow tracks that Anastasia just described, you need them to just functionally play the game, right? If you don't expand those, you will lose for sure. And that's the demand that the game puts on you is you are setting up your action economy. I mean, the game gives you lots of ways to make that happen, but you can't ignore it.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's very easy to be like, okay, I'm not gonna be able to clear all of them off. So which one do I leave on there? Well, there's no way I'm going to need to conserve next round. And then like fast forward 15 minutes later, and you're just like hitting yourself in the head like, whoa, of course you need to conserve this round. Why didn't you do that?
How did I not think of that? They started making fun of me because I have this like system that I do where I like start plotting my discs out by like putting them like above and below each specialist and like how many discs are they going to eat. It's what I call it. They're going to eat, with using their actions. And then I don't know how deep we'll go into this, but each specialist has an ability to upgrade and that can like free up their spot. So there's kind of this like additional layer that can come, especially as you're playing the game where you're like, cool, okay, so if I take a journal action and I can upgrade the specialist, okay, but I want to use them first so that when I upgrade them, I'm going to clear the space, but I lose the disc. Like there is a lot that you can kind of get into, which, does add some AP, but to me, it's what makes the puzzle of this game so interesting and so fun. It's kind of like working through all that, but it also can be a little bit frustrating. It can have some of those moments of like, if only I had thought about this just like a little bit differently.
Those employee cards are actually a lot like Lost Ruins of Arnak. The turn that you upgrade them, you can double use them. The thing that this says over Arnak is like, I'll just help you out for free every turn. And this one says, you got to pay me action discs constantly.
I need more discs. Feed me more discs. I want more discs.
So obviously you can think ahead and you could decide, I don't need to conserve next round because you have a plan. But there is a moderate amount of things that you can't plan for. For example, sonaring. We mentioned that earlier. Like one of the main things that you do in this game is put new pieces of the play space onto the table. At the very beginning, usually there's like only 4, 5, 6 maybe cards face up, and there might be 20 of them at the end of the game. And these, they really change the options that you have. And so, yeah, going back to my example, I might be like, there's no reason to conserve. I'm going to leave that token on there. And then in the next round, Anastasia might sonar and put an amazing conservation action spot down. And I have exactly enough science to do it. But, silly me, I didn't give myself that option at the, start of the round or whatnot. And that is something that you have to kind of keep in mind. Like, you can't plan forever, but also maybe that means you should plan for being flexible for what could happen.
There's definitely output randomness in this game, because when you just sonar, you're going to get rewards for the new tiles that you flip out. And you get to draw 2 and keep 1, so it's not just totally random, kind of like Beyond the Sun in that way.
Yeah.
But, you might be really looking for a specific track that you need to move up, this or that track. And you might flip 2 things that don't do either of those. And you're like,
just like,
that was my plan.
Yeah.
It can make you feel like you really kind of missed something. And I actually, when I say feel, like you actually might have just missed something that you like super needed in that process. But with the choosing 2 and the getting multiple rewards, like you can usually get something that you need, because everything is good. There's just something that might have been better.
Yeah. It's really interesting to think about the way they've added in this kind of luck element to the game. If you are familiar with any of the previous endeavors, everything is just like open information. It's all available to you at the start of the game. The biggest difference you're going to see here is that this game adds in a lot of luck that was not present. I love games that add just the right amount of luck to make it that feeling of like, what am I going to find? Like, what's under the flip? In this, you have to explore down, right? Like you start on level 1 and then you got to go down to depth 2 and depth 3. So you're naturally building this board. It's beautiful too, because the tiles get darker. They also get cooler. They get better rewards. It creates this very unique play space for every game. It reminds me a little bit of Dead Reckoning, actually, in the way that the tiles kind of come out and are explorable. It's just cool, because you're just like, what am I going to find? What is going to come out? And I think that is just really fun. And it's a really fun way to add a lot of replayability and variability in this game.
It does. I don't know if I'm convinced yet that the play space is like quote unquote mechanically fair, but it is very, very thematic. It's you get that feeling of like expanding out, even the like placing the tiles and like going deeper into the ocean. You're like, oh, okay, cool. Like I can only go deeper here because we've been to higher layers before. And I think that aspect of the system, and as I mentioned earlier, I like the art in this game and the kind of the uniqueness of the tiles that come out. Again, I'm not sure that they're fair, but they're cool, because it's like, oh, they're sea turtles. They help me move somewhere else once I've conserved them. Like, that's neat. That's very Finding Nemo.
Yeah.
I mean, if the game was just draw 2 cards, take the benefits on them, and it was just like, a playing card with an orange and a green circle on it, it'd be like, yay, I got the thing. But like thematically, it really does pull you in. And like with both the theme and the mechanics, like for one little element in pretty much every game I've played, there's like on the 3rd level, maybe the 4th, there's this awesome orange track whale. It's like the card is just this big whale.
Yeah.
And all you could do is do diving actions, which is a big stack of random tokens placed on a random card that was placed out. But every time you take a token from the recruitment whale, you get to go up once on the orange track as well.
The recruitment whale.
Exactly.
Thomas the recruitment whale, obviously.
Exactly.
Obviously.
But every time that card comes out, I'm just like, oh, it's the orange track whale.
Yeah.
It also looks cool.
Can we talk about those dive tokens for a second?
Yeah. I mean, another luck part, right?
Another luck part. Yeah, exactly. And another
no draw
place.
2, take 1 here. No draw 2, take 1.
Yeah. Another place.
But it is draw 1, get 1 option, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, get 1 option. Well, we've mentioned science. Science is another resource in the game. It is a track, but it doesn't involve any bumps. It's just how you keep track of it. So it lets you do the other actions. It's the only currency is science. And each dive token gives you science, or it gives you some other Benny. You could get, sometimes it gives you a free action, which is awesome because you can just take that immediately. Sometimes it gives you track bumps. Sometimes it gives you stuff, a disc. Like it's pretty cool. It can also feel like somehow your opponent is just always drawing the best discs, like
for that right moment. Yeah,
for that right moment.
Maybe Anastasia starts every game with a Force Science Wild. Who knows?
I
right?
mean, I guess
I think she's got 5 of those up her sleeve.
Yeah, just kind of like drop one out.
But yeah, I think it's a really smart way to do it though, because like you're getting a minimum of 3 science and a maximum of 5 science, although the 5 science one actually costs you an extra thing. So you're getting between 3 and 5, and you need science to like journal and conserve and all that kind of stuff. So if it was like 1 to 5, then it might feel more punitive to me. Like, I really enjoy diving in this game. I really enjoy flipping over the tile to see what it is. And I'm pretty much, I can't remember, honestly, even one moment where I was like, ugh, this tile is bad. Because I'm always just like,
space of randomness. Yeah, the floor is very close to the ceiling.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, oh, I don't care about this action. Cool. 4 science. All right. But I do remember lots of times where I do pull a token and I'm like, oh my God, I desperately needed a move. And it has the move icon. Who cares about science? Like,
I don't care. I needed
So you remember the highs, but not the lows, which
so
is
hard.
Like, I feel like normally it's the opposite with luck, where you're like the painful moments are the ones that stick with you, but I feel like it's the opposite here.
Yeah. Well, and I love super tight Euro games that balance that tightness with luck. And that's what this game does here, both with the exploration that we just talked about and with these dive tokens. It's like, and I think it's important to note that of those 5 actions, diving only takes 1 disc. We talked about the 3 that take 2 discs. This only takes it's 1
cheap.
disc, and it gives you a benefit. So that can be so powerful because you're just like, cool. So I just think the game naturally balances itself out really well with this injection of these pieces, because it's like, cool, yeah, we know the beginning of this game is really tight. The whole game can be tight to a certain extent in terms of you needing to kind of build your own action economy. But when you add in these like fun little elements, it's just cool because you're like, okay, I got nothing else to do. Okay, I can dive. And, obviously you need to be at a spot with dive tokens. And this is where some of the interaction is, right? Like, I don't think we've really talked about this, but the board, when we talked about placing those discs onto the board, they don't leave. You use up a space, it's been used up. And there's some pretty cool like shared incentive elements where if I put a disc down and then someone else does another disc somewhere else in certain spaces, you both get a benefit.
But mostly it's a race, right? Mostly it's a first come, first serve. You get here, you explore it, which is very real life, I guess, deep sea anyway, right? Like the person who explores a Titanic is that person.
Yeah, that's what they're going to get. Exactly. So there's a lot of that. And same thing with those dive tokens. Yeah, you have a stack, but there may be only 4 in that space. You want to go to the recruitment whale and you want to get those orange bumps. Well, if Jonathan just goes down there and leaves his sub there and he just every
maybe
turn.
I hired the double dive person and I'm just like, dive,
boom,
dive.
Boom, boom. Yeah. And then Nick and I played a game the other night where I just like went to a spot and I don't remember what the benefit was that I got, but I was just like chilling there. And every time I dove, I got to I think I got to journal. I got to take a whole nother action. And he just kind of like left me there and he was like, wait, how did that, like by the time he realized what I had done, I'd like, I had cleared all the dive tokens. And I was like,
sometimes it's because coming in after someone just action wise is bad because there's not enough space to compete with them. In this instance, though, I actually think it was pretty legit because it was one where your technology was better than mine. So like you'd been rewarded for going up this track and I was like just watching on in envy. So I even though in the moment I was like, this sucks, I actually like that the game did that. Yeah. And the game is very obtuse about this. The deeper you go, the better the tiles are.
Yeah, but in order to get there, you have to increase your blue track. You can't, at the start of the game, you cannot dive deeper than level 1.
Which is the surface.
That's one.
Like, you're a submarine that cannot down periscope.
Yeah.
They put like a little bamboo shoot on top of the submarine.
Yeah,
so you can make sure you breathe out of it. So, we talked about randomness in terms of the way that the board gets built out, but there's a kind of different variability that this game has in its setup, but you kind of choose it. So you know, in a lot of Euro style games, you'll like flip a couple objectives at the beginning or something like that. This game instead has what they call missions, I think. And each of them has and states for you what the, you know, goals are for that mission, what you're going to be competing for, what kinds of actions you want to take. And, you know, you might play a mission that says conserving's really good this time because you get this reward and that reward for doing conservation type actions. It might tell you to go to certain sectors or I already said take certain actions or maybe compete on certain, you know, categories of things. And at first I thought this seemed like a kind of silly system, but I actually, upon playing it a few more times, really liked it. I think from a publisher perspective, it's like really easy to put together. Like it's just a couple of pages. They could be in the back of a rule book, or in this case, I think they're like kind of half papery, cardboardy things that go in the box. Yeah. And the missions also have like different reward systems. We haven't talked about stars at all, but one of the kind of main bennies you can get in the game are these stars that go on these little hexagon tracks, and they have different ones for the different missions. So it makes the game feel a little bit different each time you play.
It's not just, oh, sonaring is better this game. It's like sonaring is better, and now there is a clustering like blob minigame in the middle of the board, or now there is these racing tracks, or there's one that we played where there's like 2 discrete areas you can put tokens on, but you have to choose the very beginning of the game. Do you want points or do you want stuff?
To sit down in a game that has 10 different missions, and I think it's like really important to note, Nick said this, but they changed the setup of the game. They changed the way you interact with the starting setup, because some games you have to start on one specific tile and you get a disc. But as you go into the deeper missions, you can start anywhere. So you get to choose. You're like, am I going to have less actions on my first turn, but maybe I'm going to get a different track bump, or I'm going to get something else, right? They also change the way you score in the game, and in a way that, in my opinion, dramatically impacts how you interact with the rest of the game. If they are prioritizing sonaring, as Jonathan said, then and you're going to do that a lot, but they might only prioritize it on like level 1 and level 2. And then they might say, okay, but the next scoring goal is you need to journal at depths 3 and 4, or you need to reach depth 5. So they're going to kind of tell you how you're going to interact with the game. And I think that the game, by the nature of these missions, especially start playing through them, they kind of naturally teach you some of the strategy of the game too. We've talked a lot amongst us about how sonaring early is really strong or and important, especially for new players, because of the rewards it gives you on getting track bumps. But I think the early missions reward that. But as you get better with the game, the later missions say, okay, we're going to assume you really understand how to create your economy. We're going to kind of trust you to do that. So we're going to start rewarding you for other things. We're going to set point goals for other things. And I think it is so cool to have this big card that you're playing with, that you're not only is dictating this, as Nick said, it's not like you're flipping a couple of objectives, but then you're also directly interacting with it with the star system. Like you're placing stars on, and how you interact with that. One of those 3 specialists that I said you could start the game with is one who just gives you a star, so that in every game is going to give you a different opportunity based on maybe what rewards are available when you place your star on that mission. You might be like, cool, in this game, if I place a star here, I'm going to get a different benefit than I might have otherwise in a previous game playing with a different mission. And that's going to start my game off in a completely different way. It is so brilliant. It creates so much variability. I mean, I played it 12 times. I haven't even played all the missions. And every time I sit down, I'm excited to play a new one.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting point about the pilot. It's like one of the starting people. And you were like, oh, every time you play the game, you have to pick one of the first, one of these 3. But yeah, that one gives you a star. So the mission, so it's almost like it's always 3 choices, but that third choice is a little bit of an extra choice.
Always by the
do
mission.
I care about going there early?
Way of making 3 choices actually be a more broader space. Yeah,
never really occurred to me. Also, just to be like explicit, it's not a campaign or anything like that. Like you could play with Mission 9, the very first game, if you want to. Probably not a good idea.
Yeah, you do not have to go in order. No. In fact, after
I've still
playing
never played
Mission
1.
Yeah, I know. I was like, we're not doing Mission
too.
1.
If it's your first time playing and you're teaching this and nobody knows it, you should probably play Mission 1. and that'll be the only time you should ever play mission 1. It is kind of like a tutorial. Like, honestly, if I think the teacher of the game has played before and they're playing with people who are experienced with board games in general, just go to mission 2. Mission 1 isn't bad. It's just like, get points for playing the game. So you're like, okay, it's Water Wings. You're not missing anything, Nick.
Yeah. The one thing that I will say about the missions is just that it does, especially as you get into later missions, and this is a little bit of a warning if you do sit down and you're like, let me play mission 7 or whatever, is just that sometimes it can make some of the actions less interesting. Like we had something that happened in a recent play where it was just like, Nick asked me, he was like, is there even any point to conserving right now?
Conserving,
or researching? The mission doesn't
reward it. It's just like, don't play with this. It's like, all right, fine. Yeah,
we're like, there are 3 scoring goals and none of them rewarded conservation. So it was just like, so we were flipping those tiles and they were coming out and they gave other little rewards, but for the amount of discs that they ate, it seemed
like worth it.
Better to journal or do something else.
I mean, in a game with 5 actions, for a mission to be like, use 4 of them. That is a little bit of a miss for me, but it's okay because you just choose to ignore that part of the game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's more common in the later missions. And I think they're just trying to create more unique experiences and be like, okay, and there's a whole mission focused on conservation. There's a whole mission kind of focused on journaling. So it's just like, hey, we're going to play deeper in one way or another.
I feel like if a person played this game a handful of times, you would just have like your favorite 2 or 3 missions. Those are the only ones that you play.
Yeah, probably. I think the missions are also doing a neat thing of subtly influencing the shared game space. Like I've noticed that over time. Like if you have a mission where conservation is not rewarded, you're going to look at the end of the game. You're probably going to look down and be like, wow. Well, even if I wanted to conserve, I probably wouldn't really be able to because we kept ditching those cards because we cared about because you draw 2 and you keep 1, you draw 2 and keep 1. That's kind of neat, I guess. I mean, like you said, it's going to be mostly neat once you play the game a few times, but I'm pretty okay with it as long as you're in a mindset of like, I am going to play this a bunch.
Yeah, it has to narrow down the play space a little bit so that the players are forced to compete in what could be a quite finitely large ocean, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So switching gears a little bit here, why don't we talk a little bit about the player count? We kind of alluded to the length of this game, and
and the player interaction.
And the player interaction, yeah, it's not a short game. Let's put it that way.
Jonathan was like, our 2-player game took us 2 hours, and Anastasia and I are like, we could do this in less than 2 hours. 2 hours later.
We really did, and that's me having played it 12 times, and Nick having played it 3 or 4. It was not, and being one of the fastest players I know, it was not.
I don't even think when I'm playing the game, I don't even feel like I'm thinking for that long about anything.
No.
It's a bit of a time travel game, a time warp. Yeah.
It doesn't even feel like 2 hours. I don't know what happened. I'm just like, oh man, I guess it's been 2 hours. Like, yeah.
Well, there's also a funny thing that happens where it's a 6-round game, and the very first turn, you could do like almost nothing. And this thing seems to always happen.
3 minutes long.
Yeah. Oh, we're 3 rounds in. It's over.
Yeah, when we go into the 5th round and we're like, it's only been like 45 minutes. We're crushing it. And then it's like, oh, well, the 6th round is usually about 30% of the entire playtime because you've ramped up into that. And then, and then you look at the clock, you're like, how has it been 2 hours now?
Yeah.
But the first game that I played, it was 3.5 hours or so. It was, I think, a full, that might have been a 5-player game. Maybe don't play 5 players the very first time you play this, or maybe don't play 5 players at all.
I didn't even know
it does. Well, I backed it on Kickstarter. I think it came with a 5-player optional thing. And here's the thing: that was my first time playing it, and I had so much fun that I twisted Anastasia's arm to play it, and you were not that interested, but I was like, I really had fun, even though it was really long and there was a lot of downtime.
Yeah, because let's just set the scene here. We're at Games Day, and they go to play this, and it takes, he says 3.5 hours. It seemed like an eternity. In that time, I played 4 other games. I'm being dramatic. When I played, and I looked at it, and I saw them playing it, and I was just like, I don't know. Like, honestly, I remember thinking at the time, man, so bad. I was like, yeah, I'm really grateful I missed that one. Like, I'm good. But he loved it, and he convinced me, and so, you know, like, I don't need a lot of convincing, but yeah, and then we tried it, and oh man, and I was totally hooked. But it is sometimes hard when, you know, we've all played a game like that where you walk by the space. I'm sure Ark Nova looks like that too. You walk by it, you see all the things, you're like, oh my God, they're 4 hours in. You're like,
that looks like a mess. Move on.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to go there, right? But yeah, so it's not the shortest game, and we've had that experience as well. We played it at 4. I played it at 4, 3, 2. We played it at all the counts now. I mean, I think it's definitely it's a solid 2 hours at 2. I think it's 2.5, 3, 3.5 with 3, and I think it's 3.5, 4 with 4. I mean, I think it increases by player. There is a little asterisk to that with the co-op mode that we haven't talked about, but we have alluded to. But still, I think that it's still a 2 hour, 3 hour experience, and at least that's been our experience. Yeah.
I mean, there's no mechanical thing to try and regulate it. It's just you add another person, you add that person's worth of all of their actions and thinking to the space, and also you add more uncertainty because the play space is it doesn't change with the player count. It sort of can, because with more people, there's more players, there's more opportunities for people to sonar. So like in my experience in a 4-player game, the board usually gets completely full. Like we completely expand the whole thing. But in 2-player games, frequently it's only like 2/3 done. There's a lot of empty space that it never actually got to, which is actually I'm like thinking about it on the fly here. It's almost like self-regulating, at least as far as how much space there is to do stuff. You know, if there's less people to add more spaces, then they might naturally fill the spaces that are there more. Maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on how much you want to get in each other's way, right? And if you do it in a 2-player game or a 5-player game where we're going to the same spaces and kind of competing for those spaces, it'll change a little bit of the flow of how much you're going to flip out on the board. But I do suspect you have to take the move action a lot more in a bigger player count game.
Yeah. The blue track probably becomes a priority. As far as player count is concerned, to like draw a line in the sand, I think this game might be best at 3, although I really do like it at 2.
I agree.
But my experience with the 4 and 5-player games is coming back to the mission board and the star tokens.
Oh, yeah.
There's no difference between 2 players and 5 players on these mission boards. And what that means is there's a lot more people to put stars on these boards. And what that really means is in the last round of the game, on multiple occurrences at these high player counts, we have literal mountains of star tokens to the point where we have to remove them from the board and make a pile next to the board to store them. Otherwise, it will become a dexterity game where they fall down and then you're not really sure where these tokens were put down. And that feels weird. Like, I think in one of these games,
I had
like 18 tokens off to the side, and I was one of 4 players. And it was like, I don't necessarily want there to be more and more stuff in the box, but it feels like there should be like a 2 and 3 player version of each mission and then a 4 and 5 player version of each mission so that it actually balances out. Because like it just almost becomes a non-decision, right? At that point, like in the 5th and 6th round at those player counts, you're just like, and I throw a star over there for 2 points because that's literally all I can do because it's full. That's just kind of bugged me a little bit.
The stars are a little funky in the game anyway, I think, which is like, the stars have an interesting idea behind them, which is you can either get a benefit or you can get some points, but you can also only get these things if they're connected to the blob of stars that has already been placed. So there's some kind of like timing thing there. But you're going to play 75% of your stars in the 5th and 6th rounds of the game. We're probably just taking 2 points is wiser than almost anything else you can do. And so, you're even like kind of pushed towards doing this mountain system anyway. And I like that they have a system that says, hey, your victory points can be these other things. And they do it in kind of this weird way, but it's not the most elegant.
Yeah. So 3 players? Do we agree? I'm curious.
Yeah, 3 players seems good. Yeah, no, I'm inclined to agree.
Yeah. I think 3 players. I mean, I think for the competitive game, actually, for the co-op too.
you need to cut your hand in blood and like sign on the floor what the only good player count is here.
No. I 3 players is probably is great. I also really enjoy the 2-player game, and I also think that 2 players is the best time. Like I like play time. So to just be able to fire this off at 2, but the thing is, like, if you have that third person, you can explore a little bit more, and you can kind of like open things up a little bit faster. But like I think it's best at 2 and 3. Like every good game, right? You want a little bit more control. You want a little less downtime. 2 players is great, but the space is going to be a little bit smaller, and you're going to be responsible for doing a little bit more to affect that, and you're going to have things are not going to flush in the same way as you would with more players.
So speaking of the length and player count and everything, one element that can happen in this game that we have seen, and I'm going to try not to harp on too much, is the act of watching other people play. Downtime is an element in these games, it's true, but this game in particular is a game of escalation, of you do well at the beginning, that'll help you do even better in the middle, and you get to do great at the end. If you do okay in the beginning, then maybe you're doing well in the middle, and you're just doing good by the end. And what that can actually mean is you can find yourself, if you're not doing as good as other people, watching other people play. You only have so many actions that you could do. It's governed by those discs you get from the green track and also the yellow track. How many things can you clear off? You have 7 people, but maybe you can only use 4 of them because the other 3 are blocked because you weren't able to get the yellow track going. And that does mean that you can like be done, and somebody else has like 4 to 6 or 7 even maybe more turns to do because of how they of what's going on. It's kind of a hot button thing, like Runaway Leader, Fall Behind Loser. Like it's like a red alarm blaring. Like if you say that in a podcast, you have to support it and everything. But I definitely have had some frustration with this game because I'm not as good at it as certain other people.
I agree with you. I think that this is structurally the biggest weakness of this game. There's no real catch-up system in this game, which I'll get back to why that's maybe okay later. But if you start sliding behind, you're going to take fewer actions. The person with more actions is going to be able to move up more tracks, and they're going to continue to just get farther and farther ahead of you. And I think that can definitely lead to some early play experiences that feel really frustrating. You'll get to the end, you're like, I don't know what I was supposed to do. Well, what you're supposed to do is on turn 1, not take that specific employee and not advance up that track without taking this action. There's a couple ways to set up the game at the beginning, but the first time you're playing, if you're a person who's just like, all right, I'm going to take an action, see how it works out, you might find yourself 3 turns in toast. And like, to really drive this point home, like not trying to like toot my own horn here, but I'm pretty good at games. And on the first turn of the game that I played with Anastasia, and my first turn playing, I was like, I'll just take this thing and see how it goes. Took a thing, did a couple reasonable seeming actions. We got into the second turn and I was like, oh no, I'm in trouble. And I sat there for, I'm not exaggerating, 15 minutes trying to figure out if there was anything I could do in the whole turn to fix my problem. And Anastasia then was like, let me see if I can figure out how to fix your problem. And she couldn't either. The only thing we landed on was like, you needed to do it right on the first turn. You're screwed. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason that as we've been talking about this game, we've talked about like, we mentioned this with the missions that, hey, like, maybe you want to sonar early, that the early missions kind of promote sonaring. There's a reason we talked about how good sonaring is. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the best action. It just means that it's the action that if you haven't played the game a lot, you probably want to take on your first round. You want to plan to take. I'm not saying you have to take the sonar specialist. I'm not saying you must do that. I'm just saying that like one of your first 2 actions, because everyone does start with a specialist that can do all 5 actions and you keep that all game, is probably sonar in your first game because it's going to naturally give you the track bumps that you need to keep your engine going to make sure that you don't totally fall on your face. In the case of what Nick did is he took the diver. We talked about dive tokens. Those are great. That's great. And then he did a journal action. We talked about journal actions. They eat discs. And suddenly he put himself in a position. He upgraded his guy, but he lost the disc. And it's like these things happened that if it had been a play, his second play, even like he would have known what to do. I know you know what to do because you told me that like in your second play you did the exact same thing, but you knew exactly how to do it. Like, so you played it out and you were like, cool, this is how I make that work. But in that play, it made it so that you just kind of like set things off on the wrong foot.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're dead. It's not like you can't play the game.
Right.
You can feel yourself being behind early, and you see yourself just continuing to stay behind because the players who have sequenced better with their action discs are just going to kind of continue to have those same actions. And it's harder to stumble when you have a medium to large number of actions, as opposed to when you have a few actions where stumbling is punished is maybe too cruel of a word, but certainly it's there. I think it's a notable part of this game, and it's just something to be wary of. The game comparison that I keep making to this is really any Splutter game, but Food Chain Magnate, where there's a whole bunch of different employees that you can hire, but really there's only 2 correct answers. And this game doesn't have as many choices with only 2 correct answers, but it has a chain, and you can't ignore the chain that you need to do. And Food Chain Magnate's an amazing game. It's very good. But like, if I was playing that game with someone, I would warn them off the bat, you're hiring this person or this person. There's no choice beyond that.
Yeah. I mean, the best way to describe it, I think, is actually rich get richer, which, you could say a lot of Runaway Leader games are like that. But doing more stuff means you can do even more stuff. And you have to have the right mental headspace for this. I played this game at 3 players, twice the same 3 players with Anastasia. And in the first of those games, I got super frustrated. Like, I got salty. We were at the beginning of the 3rd round out of 6 rounds, and I was just like, well, what am I even doing? Anastasia is going to win. And it was like, oh, is she though? And I was like, no, I've been keeping track. Like, every single round she gets further and further ahead. Like, I'm counting her track bumps. In the first round, she ended it with like 2 more than the rest of us. In the second round, she had 5 more. In the third round, now she's got 8 more. And I was just sitting there. I'm like, the game is over if I want to win. Like, I cannot win this game. It is now a race between me and the other person. And I got really, really salty and frustrated about it. And I tried to keep my mouth shut. And I'm sitting there. I'm just like, oh man, I would bet $100 in the 3rd round that she's going to win this game. And she did. you did at the end. That lead and track bumps got to the point where it was like you had 18 more than me at the end of the game, because these things compound. The second time we did this, by the way, Anastasia is very good at this game. She pulled away in a very similar way, but I went into that play where I was just like, I'm going to have fun. I'm just going to play the game. I'm going to play with the systems. We got to the start of the 3rd round, and I was like, okay, well, it has happened again. I had an okay start, and she had a great start. She played it right. Like, this isn't random that you are winning. I think you're really good at this game, but I'm just going to not be salty, and I'm going to do the best I can to try to get the best score I can, and I'm going to try to, who knows, maybe she'll like fall flat on her face and I'll have a chance to win, but I don't think that's actually going to happen. And you just kind of have to go into that, or make an argument in that 3rd round to be like, Anastasia won, let's re-rack and try it again. Like, I'll try to do better. Which is, just there are multiple ways you can look at it beyond being like, oh, this is just a bad thing, right?
I'm for sure of the opinion that Euro games need more of a concession culture, which war gamers have figured out, but we have not.
Train gamers too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
train
gamers. Yeah. I did promise on this point that I was going to say why it's okay maybe that this game has
Yeah.
Because if you are all playing with the similar experience here, the game is not designed for you to stumble. It expects that you're going to be in a similar place, that you understand what we referred to earlier as the Endeavor system. And then when you understand the Endeavor system, you won't fall on your face. And then actually the game becomes about the 5 actions, the deep sea side of the game, and being tactical around, oh, what are these things that we have flipped are exploring on the board? And so
absolutely,
the game opens up when everyone understands the Endeavor system, but the Endeavor system is punishing when you aren't quite in line with what it's doing yet. But all of these problems are solved by our friend co-op mode.
The co-op.
Yes.
We have been building to this moment for the last 45 minutes. Are you ready to have your mind blown? by co-op mode. Yeah.
So I backed this game on Kickstarter, and one of the selling points is like solo mode, co-op mode, and I was like,
whatever. Yeah,
whatever. Co-op mode.
Games has a co-op mode.
I don't really care.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, especially like competitive Euro has a co-op mode, whatever. And then we actually tried it, and I loved it. I loved it.
Great.
So
much
good.
Fun.
One of the amazing things
So
about the
much
co-op mode in this is how little it changes. So, I mean, first of all, it's fully cooperative. Okay, that makes sense. But I think literally all the mechanics that we said so far are the same in the co-op mode.
You shuffle 3 objectives. You shuffle 3 things bad that happen to you. I can't remember what they're called. Setbacks. And at the start of each of those 6 rounds, you flip one over. And then we talked about the missions, right? Those missions, every scoring goal has a co-op scoring goal. Every the starboard has a co-op scoring threshold, and accomplishing 7 goals is insane. I've never done it.
Well, there are 7 total, so that would be.
But there are 7 total.
the
so
grand slam.
Are you going to do 3 to 7? You only know about the 4 on the mission when you start, and then you're going to flip over 3 more as you go, and then you do it. To be clear, this is also the solo mode, which is also so fun. It's playing the same game, but now you're working together, and you're trying to accomplish these really hard goals.
It's incredibly puzzly. You need to crowdsource in order to actually make all these things happen. And, you know, at a ridiculously high level, the thing I was kind of complaining about before, like super salty John is watching Anastasia be really good at this game, boo-hoo. When we played it co-op, I only played it the one time, but when we did, I remember in the second round, Nick had a really good flip of one of the sonars. And it was awesome. I was like, oh, heck yeah. Like, that means you get to go up there on your green track. That means you're going to get an extra token. Yeah. Even if I was done, and I think I probably was done at that point, I'm just like, go get him, Nick. Go, go, go. Because we're on the same team.
Really satisfying, right? To do all that stuff. And it's interesting because it takes the same systems in the game, but it flips your valuation of how you're doing the actions on their head. Because before, where you're racing to complete the objectives, now you're saying, okay, we need to complete all these objectives. Am I going to clear this entire space by myself, and then you guys can more efficiently go somewhere else? Or is it more that, like, we should work on clearing this space together? We even, in the game that we played, flipped an objective that said, like, you must have a certain number of tiles where everybody did something. So it's like, Jonathan, like, you and I are going to do most of this, but we got to leave that last space for Anastasia.
Can't finish it. Yeah.
And like that like collaboration of how you're taking the actions rather than me having to look at your board and saying, are you coming over here to take my actions from me? Do I need to take this right now to make sure that you don't get in the way? Makes the conversation and play space much more lively and dynamic at the table. And then, like, you know, I suppose that you could argue that a mode like this would have a quarterbacking, but it's just there's too much brain space, I think, really for a person to do that. And
so there is quarterbacking. We all have to quarterback together.
Quarterback each other. Well, you kind of fill in the slots, right? Like, you know, at various points we're like counting different objectives, and then like one person's like, no, we've cleared that objective, but what's the problem with this objective here?
Yeah, I remember in that one we had to have a certain number of ticks on the yellow and blue track, and I just volunteered to be the person that kept track of all of our yellow.
Yeah, I was like, I can't think about
all right, everybody, we're up to 48. We need to hit 56. Just keep it. Oh, we just went down. Okay, now we're at 47.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then those teammate moments where it's like, "What's your blue track level, Nick?" Or like, "It's still 3. I'm working on it. I'm sorry."
Yeah, I'm working. I'm gonna get it there. Okay, let's get it together. Yeah, but the joy of the, like, when you're reading these objectives, you look at them and you're like, how are we gonna get 9 discs down or 17 discs? I mean, they vary by player count, right? And so you're like,
I think it was like 16 sonars in the first 2 columns or something like that.
You're gonna be like, 16 sonars, how are we gonna do that? Like,
we only have
I
6
can't
rounds.
even
what the heck's going on?
Yeah, having that many discs. When we went to play this, and you guys hadn't played the co-op, right? Yeah, it was just like it was just like our first play.
It was my second game.
yeah, because Nick and I had just played, and credit to Nick after that first play being like, okay, sure, yeah, I'll play it again. I mean, you were in.
Yeah, I'll say that was more I needed to prove something to myself.
Yeah. So he was down. So we were like, so we jump on. We're gonna play it, and so the game asks you to basically call how many objectives you're gonna do before you start. I think because they come out that there's those 3 that come out, that you don't know about. So I think so we're like looking at it. It's like 3 is like good, and then like 4, and so Jonathan and I are like, okay, what do we think? Like 4? 4 seems like reasonable.
We were aiming for 5. I was thinking 5 was good.
Were you thinking 5
was like you're experienced with the game. Yeah.
Because I had just played the solo game and was like, it was hard. And then Nick's like, 6, 100%, 6.
Your second play ever. I was about to fight him on this, and Anastasia was like, all right.
Yeah. I was like, whatever makes him want to play again. Let's go. Sure. 6.
I genuinely did not think we were going to win this game. Like, I was having a lovely
I didn't
time.
think we were either.
But I was just like, there is no way in heck. Because, of course, if you're gunning for 6 out of the 7, that means you have to split your effort. If you're only gunning for 4 out of the 7, then you just choose 3 that you think are just bad, and then you just focus your effort on the other ones. In this one, we had to choose 1 out of the 7 to be like, we're going to ignore that and then do all of this other stuff. And then we got it by the skin of our teeth. Like we somehow
literally
actually won.
On the nose. Yeah. It was a top gaming moment for me. As we were counting to 45 points, which is how many points we needed.
Oh my God.
I was counting it out.
Yeah.
And I hit 45 and I just screamed.
Yeah, we both did. I mean, like, it was like just elation. It was elation. The tension, the feeling, the investment. Because again, like we said, it's not a short game. This is 3 hours, or whatever it was.
Work.
Like we were, like we were committed, and the joy, and the disbelief too. Because I think
don't
even going to the
again.
6th round, I was like, okay, yeah, like maybe we'll do 5. It's good, good job, guys. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
One really fascinating thing about it, I was thinking about it afterwards because, like, we talked a lot. It's an open information game, at least between the players.
Yeah.
And like the game started, the very first thing you do is you hire one of those 3 people, and it was just like, okay, well, I want this, but if I do this, or you want that one, should we both do this one? And we were just like jumping right into the conversation, which was really fun. And I remember thinking, this is great, but this is going to be a 5-hour game because we're going to talk so much.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't. I think it came in around the same amount of time, maybe 3-ish hours. And I was thinking about that afterwards. Of course, this is a data point of 1, but there was no downtime. There was literally no downtime.
No.
Because we were working together the whole time. And like Nick hinted at a minute ago, like you're not sitting there in silence being like, are they going to get that blue bump to be able to go down to the 3rd level and take that spot? Well, let me just think about this for a second. How many discs do they have? They could go there. Do they have any more movement? You don't have any of that stuff. Instead, it's like, hey, Nick, can you get over here? Yes, no. Like you don't have to be cagey.
Instead, right? Where it's
exactly.
like we're like having this conversation about what to do, and then it's like action. Oh, wait, hold on. Can I actually do this?
Yeah.
Action.
Yeah, and you're not all doing the same work. Because like in a competitive game, like I might be sitting there trying to figure out if Nick can get to the 3rd level and take that spot, while Anastasia is also sitting there thinking if Nick can take that 3rd spot. Like when it's competitive, you have a lot of like wasted thinking of the same thing. But in this way, it wasn't. It's you just ask and discuss. And I remember at the very end, I had like 2 or 3 discs left and 1 person. The person could like conserve or journal. And I was literally like, I can't say anything good to do with this. Can you all? And that's how we won the game, because you did. You were like, oh, well, if you go here and you journal there, that journal is going to give, Nick the blue tick that needs to get over here, which will satisfy this and give us 1 extra. And that lets him put a star down, which gets us that 45th point. It's a puzzle.
It was really fun.
It's a puzzle, right?
It's a puzzle.
It's really satisfying. It's a complex puzzle with just little nubs. Like the actual individual pieces aren't that complicated. The actions are so simple, but piecing all that together. I mean, one thing, Nick, you've talked about in previous episodes about just games in general is the idea of victory points being a kind of a rough hammer towards do the things the game wants you to do. And one really cool thing about the solo mode is, one of the 7 objectives is get X points from the starboard and other things. So that's the 45 points we're talking about. That's 1 out of the 7. The other 6 have nothing to do with points. They're strictly sonar 17 times in the first 2 things. Journal in the top 2 levels this amount of time. Clear off X number of cards. Share Y number of cards. no victory points to be found, just the goal. And it almost strips back a part that is added onto games, in development. Like, okay, well, we got to make journals worth something. Otherwise, people won't journal.
Yeah.
And now it's like, well, you don't win if you don't journal because you got to journal 11 times.
In the competitive mode, the scoring honestly can be a little bit boring. Like they're there, they make for a good competitive game, but a necessary part of the game. But they're not like the best part. It's not like the scoring is there. They had to find a way to score the game.
Yeah, it's like you score 100 points and 70% of those points are boring and have like really were not a reward of your decision space, but 30% of them are you getting the little edges. And so like I think that's kind of the core at what we're driving at here, that like the game pays you points for a lot of stuff that like you're just kind of like, okay, sure, thanks for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas like where the play space matters is in those last 30%.
Yeah. Now that I played this game, 12 times or whatever, and 5 of those were competitive and 6 of them were co-op, if you count the solos and whatever, that doesn't add up to 12. I don't know how I got there, but it doesn't matter. The point is, like, at first I was like, oh, the co-op mode, it's everything. Like, this is the only way to play. And then I was like, well, no, like, the competitive game's also really fun, and it's just a different way to play. And that, like, it just adds to that immense variability. A lot of games say that they're going to do that, but I can like confidently tell you they do both so well. They do both equally well, in my opinion, is just freaking brilliant. I hope more games figure it out.
If I was someone and I was going to pick up an Endeavor game because I loved listening to what you had to say about it in this podcast, do you think you'd seriously consider picking up one of the other games at half price compared to Deep Sea, or is Deep Sea just the better design summarily that like you really would just kind of dive straight for that? Personally,
I mean, it's hard to compare because I've only played the other two once each. The main difference here, what they've kind of taken, I think, Jonathan, you were saying like I feel like it's like 40% of the game has like transferred over.
They're both cars with 4 wheels and a steering wheel.
There is,
and then that's where the similarity stops.
Yeah, I mean, Endeavor and Endeavor Age of Sail were it's like almost a perfect information game. Like everything was available to you. There is no luck, and there's a lot more area control, and it is more interactive.
There's cannons. You could punch each other.
You can punch each other. There are these pieces from the original games that have been like transposed, but the way that they've been transposed is really like a new evolution. And so I was sort of making the comparison yesterday, like Great Western Trail original or second edition compared to Great Western Trail New Zealand. Like I think they are two different games that you could easily own both because you get different flavors and experiences from them. So like I was really, really cool to see the design space, to see the evolution of kind of how they got here. But like, man, for me, Endeavor Deep Sea, like this one is just, it takes the system and adds things that I love to make it so cool.
Mm-hmm. Which you would hope, right? Like you would hope that as they develop the game more, they get to a better space.
Yeah, but
that doesn't always happen.
Doesn't always happen, right?
Like you do expect that that's going to be the thing.
Yeah, I mean,
and I am anticipating that Endeavor Deep Space in 2028 is going to be very,
awesome.
Very good.
Oh my God.
I think that we've hit on most of the things that I wanted to make sure that we talked about this game. I think it thematically does a very nice job of setting that exploration feeling. The tiles being different and kind of reacting to the circumstances is nice. If you like the Endeavor system, if you've played it before, you're not going to be surprised by that at all in this game. If you haven't played it before, I do think it's a satisfying system, although we have talked about how it can be unforgiving. So just making sure that you kind of put the brain space into understanding how that system flows really matters. And then the actual mechanisms of doing the game are not too complicated. I mean, I think you're going to be able to pick this game up. It somehow ends up adding up to being a long game, but it is a fun game. I'm absolutely going to be playing this one more. So that is ultimately the most important metric for how good a game is. And I could see playing it on both sides, but I did like pretty clearly the cooperative version the most because it stands out to me as the most unique experience compared to other board games that I've played.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Jonathan kind of alluded to this. This game speaks really, really well to my brain. I immediately took to it and just was enthralled with it. For me, this is a game where you're looking for a way that you want to do something. And then you are looking around to see if there's any other ways for you to accomplish that thing, but with more steps that will get you more things. So I need a yellow track bump to get to my next level before the next round. So I'll clear 2 more discs. But maybe I can get that by traveling. Okay, that's a simple way to do that. But maybe I could travel somewhere else that gives me a star, and then that star will give me a track bump on the blue track, and that blue track will give me a submarine, which will go on a new thing that will then give me the yellow track bump. I mean, that's what you're thinking. That's
yes.
my brain for 3 hours. And what's cool is in the co-op mode, you can then tell your friends that. So you can see them doing something, and you're like, yeah, but what if you did it this way? And then you'd get 3 more things. That puzzle for me is just so deeply, deeply satisfying. Add in the exploration, add in the luck. I want to play it more. We can stop recording. We can go play it right now. I can just anytime you want, find me. We'll play it.
I know you're keeping a keen eye on the game that you bought and its slow progress towards your house.
I was like, you don't need to buy this. You don't and I didn't, and then I did. Once the co-op mode, I was there was no more resistance. I know. I'm waiting. It's been delayed, and
I just think remember you were like, hey, Jonathan, you want to keep your copy?
I literally did. I was like, is he going to see through this?
I think I do. And you're like, okay.
I was like, how do I ask him but not ask him? This is going to happen.
Just next time you come over, just leave with a slightly puffier jacket.
Yeah. No, I committed. It's a great one, and I'm very excited to share it with more people.
Yeah, I'm really glad I got it. I backed it on Kickstarter. I've actually had it for months. I can't exactly remember when it came in, maybe 3 or 4 months ago. And it came in with a torrent of other games. And I was like, oh, yeah, cool. I'll get to that. I remember I played the original Endeavor in 2009 when it first came out, and I thought it was fine. And I played it, actually, I was looking at the date. I played it pretty much exactly 4 weeks ago was that fateful 5-player game. That was only 4 weeks ago. And then I taught it to you.
Well, I was really pushing it. I've been really pushing it in our Discord.
But it definitely captured my brain too. I taught it to you because I was like, whoa, this is actually really cool. And where I land with it now is yes, I wanted to keep my copy. And I specifically wanted to keep it because of the co-op mode. If we hadn't had that co-op experience, I think you would have my copy. I
damn it! I lost myself $100.
Whoops. I think that being honest with myself, this game can it can get under my skin when I'm not doing very well. I think I'm fine at this game. I don't think I'm terribly good. And I keep playing with Anastasia, who's apparently a savant at this game. And I don't like myself when I'm being all grouchy, and I feel bad because she feels bad because she's doing so well, and that's not very good. And then we got to play the co-op mode. I'm like, now I get to play with all the toys. I get to do as well as I possibly can. And if the people around the table are doing better than me, and it seems like generally they are, I can have joy in that instead. I can be talking through this immense puzzle. Because the game itself, even in competitive mode, it's a puzzle. Anastasia was going through all that stuff. But me, I was sitting there on the sidelines with all my actions done while you were crunching through all those things.
Yeah.
But if it's a co-op mode, then instead it's a discussion that we are having, as opposed to me, trying to stay engaged while I see you do all of these various things. I much prefer being a cheerleader than feeling like I'm stuck at the the starting line, or some other analogy that doesn't quite work. So I could be convinced to play this game competitively again, but I actively want to play this cooperatively. I'm quite curious to see what it'll be like teaching it cooperatively. I know a lot of people in my group aren't particularly interested in co-op games, so it might be a little bit of a hard sell. We'll just have to see. But I really enjoy it.
But you and I aren't that interested in cooperative games, and we really like it. So I think that is just a thing we should say,
Yes, that is true. I very, very rarely play them. So, yeah, I'm really glad somebody else. That's the thing. I played it at my birthday thing about a month ago, and it was because somebody else really wanted to play it. I'm like, okay, cool. You really want to play it? Sure, let's play this game on my shelf. It's funny how these things work. And I'm really glad both of you guys enjoyed it as well. This has been a lot of fun to play through. I'm sure we'll get to it more, although there's a bunch of other games that are currently grabbing my brain as well. I know.
Games
came out by the way.
Oh man,
Yes.
I know, because I want to sit here and tell you. I know it's funny because normally we do this in the fall, like we play these games, but somehow we're having our 2024 moment now in January. And I was like, I was ready to sit here and be like, guys, this is my game. This is the game of 2024. How could anything top this? I don't know that it can. But man, we just started playing SETI, and I don't know, guys. I may have just bought that one too. I just descended. I can't.
Oh man.
Well, we'll have more to say on that and other things. But thanks for hanging out with us. This has been really fun.
Yeah. So if any of y'all have played the original Endeavors, or played Deep Sea, or you just have thoughts about this kind of stuff, we love to get comments. You can find those in the link in the description. You can find a YouTube version, leave comments over there. And we're just really happy that you came along for this, I was going to say ride, but for this dive.
Dive. Oh, dive. Definitely dive.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.